Hello everyone, my name is Jimena Martinez, and in this presentation, I will explore human development throughout the lifespan in Mexico, which is the largest Hispanic speaking country and the 11th largest in the world by population. But before we dive into the stages of development and how they are influenced by the societal and contextual factors in Mexico, I would like to discuss some key points about the theory of lifespan development. I would like to start by mentioning that, as Central 2024 states, we are partly like other individuals and partly like no other individuals. I really like this phrase because it reflects that while each person is unique, we all travel some common paths as humans and share certain characteristics and issues. For example, we all learn to walk, we engage in fantasy play as young children, and becoming more independent as adolescents. This illustrates the general course of our development, which begins in the womb and continues throughout the human lifespan. Right. According to Bo Valtis, the characteristics of the lifespan perspective are the following. Development is lifelong, which means that no age period dominates development as they are all equally important. Development is multidimensional because it consists of biological, cognitive, and socio-emotional dimensions. Development is multidirectional. This means that throughout life, some dimensions or components of a dimension expand and others shrink. For instance, during adolescence, as individuals establish romantic relationships, their relationships with friends might decrease. Development is plastic, meaning it can change and be shaped by experiences and environmental influences throughout life. Development is multidisciplinary, and development is contextual, as all development occurs within a context or setting. Context could include families, schools, churches, peer groups, cities, neighborhoods, countries, and so on. Each of these settings is influenced by historical, economical, social, and cultural factors. So, in this view, it is also important to highlight that development is constructed through biological, sociocultural, and individual factors working together. Another critical aspect to consider when discussing development throughout the lifespan is the importance of social policy. Social policy refers to a government course of action aimed at promoting the welfare of its citizens. It is influenced by values, economics, and politics, all of which shape a national approach to social issues. All right, now that we have these concepts in mind, it is time to explore each period of development in the country of Mexico. We will discover how the interactions and growth of the population are influenced by the context. But first, periods of development. What is a developmental period? Well, it is a time frame in a person's life that is characterized by certain features. The most widely used classification of developmental periods involves an A-period sequence. The first one is prenatal period. It is the time from conception to birth. It involves tremendous growth from a single cell to a complete organism with a brain and behavioral capabilities and takes place in approximately a 9-month period. Now, let's jump into the facts about Mexico. According to Heredia 2016, while nearly all pregnant women receive prenatal care, only 71.5% receive care classified as adequate, which consists factors which consider factors such as the timing of the first visit, the number of visits, and the completion of recommended procedures. Related to that, I found out that the quality and accessibility of this care also varies significantly based on socioeconomic factors and geographic region. For example, states such as Chiapas, Puebla, and Oaxaca have lower rates of adequate care compared to other states in Mexico, such as Guanajuato, Jalisco, and Durango. This data clearly portrays how, since the first stage of development, poverty and disparities can mark negatively the development of the child. Okay, now we're going to move to infancy. This is the developmental period from birth to 18 or 24 months. During this period, many psychological activities such as language, symbolic thought, sensory motor coordination, and social learning occur. According to Erikson's theorem, infancy is characterized by the stage of trust versus mistrust, where infants learn to trust or mistrust their caregivers based on their experiences. According to Piaget, infancy corresponds to the sensory motor stage, where infants explore the world through their senses and motor actions, developing concepts like object permanence. In Mexico, social disparities have a significant impact on childhood, leading to inequalities in child development and well-being. According to the Coneval, National Council for the Evaluation of Social Development Policy, over half of the children under 6 years old live in poverty. Additionally, a considerable percentage suffers from chronic malnutrition, partly because many infants are not exclusively breastfed. Many also do not receive their complete vaccination schedule during the first year of life. And all these factors affect adversely their health and development. Now, early childhood is a developmental period from the end of infancy to age 5 or 6. During this time, young children develop school readiness skills. In Piaget theory, early childhood corresponds to the pre-operational stage, which is characterized by symbolic representation and egocentric thinking. In Erikson's theory, early childhood corresponds to two stages: the autonomy versus shame stage, which occurs from ages 1 to 3, in which children begin to assert their sense of independence or autonomy, and the initiative versus guilt stage, which occurs during the preschool years. In this stage, children take initiative when they are encouraged and supported. However, they might develop feelings of guilt if their efforts are criticized or discouraged. In Mexico, significant disparities in access to school, resources, school infrastructure, unequal funding, and quality of education persist, influenced by factors like geographic location, socioeconomic status, and indigenous background. In a recent study conducted by Prado and Perez in 2021 in an urban environment in Mexico, they found that investment in resources oriented to improve socio-emotional development and literacy, such as opening libraries and more daycares, could foster and strengthen early childhood development in the country. Additionally, something interesting that I found related to Erikson's theory in this stage is that Mexican parents express less verbal approval and more verbal disapproval compared to European American parents, which could lead to the feeling of guilt affecting children's self-confidence and autonomy in further stages. All right, now we're gonna move to middle and late childhood. It is the developmental period from about 6 to 11 years old. During this period, children master the fundamental skills of reading, writing, and arithmetic. Uh, in middle and late childhood, Piaget's theory places children in the concrete operational stage. During this time, children develop logical thinking about concrete situations. While Erickson's theory addresses the industry versus superiority psychosocial conflict. In this stage, children strive for competence and success in their endeavors. Okay. According to the World Bank 2020, in Mexico, 62% of the children population lives in urban areas, whereas 38% of them live in rural areas. And 44% of the children population lives in extreme poverty. Additionally, social inequalities and gender gaps are significant challenges in Mexican classroom. These growing disparities directly affect children participation and, as a result, their ability to develop new skills, build social relationships, and pursue their dreams and passions. Adolescence encompasses the transition from childhood to early adulthood, entering at approximately 10 to 12 years of age and ending at 18 to 22 years of age. Adolescence begins with rapid physical changes, dramatic gains in height and weight, changes in body contour, and the development of sexual characteristics. At this point in development, the pursuit of independence and an identity are prominent themes. Thought is more logical, abstract, and idealistic. According to Erickson, adolescence, ages 12 to 18, is the stage of identity versus role confusion. In this stage, adolescents grapple with forming a sense of self and figuring out their place in the world. Piaget, on the other hand, places adolescence in the formal operational stage. This stage is characterized by the ability to think abstractly, reason hypothetically, and engage in systematic problem solving. And this stage begins around age 12 and continues into adulthood. Now, while in many developed countries, adolescents are exploring their own identities, many young females in Mexico face challenges related to pregnancies. Adolescent pregnancy is a significant public health concern in Mexico, as it has one of the highest rates among OECD countries. In 2020, over 500,000 mothers in Mexico were between the ages 15 and 19. The situation is further complicated by regional disparities. For example, some states experience particularly high rates of adolescent pregnancy and have limited access to reproductive health services and education. Additionally, due to poverty, often many adolescents drop out of school to contribute to their family's income. Now we're going to move to early adulthood. This is a developmental period that begins in the late teens or early 20s and lasts through the 30s. For young adults, this is a time for establishing personal and economic independence, becoming proficient in a career, and for many, selecting a mate, learning to live with that person in an intimate way, starting a family, and rearing children. In Piaget theory, early adulthood falls within the formal operational stage, where individuals can think abstractly and hypothetically, and Erickson, however, places early adulthood in the intimacy versus isolation stage, emphasizing the development of close, intimate relationships. In Mexico, during this stage of development, there is a growing trend of older students in higher education. This includes those over 24 years old, with a notable increase in the 30 to 39 and 40 plus age groups. However, while higher education participation is rising, securing adequate employment remains a challenge for many graduates in this country. According to the OECD in 2019, finding a job can be more challenging for young higher education graduates in Mexico compared to their peers in other OECD countries. The employment rate for young graduates in Mexico is 80.7%, which is below the OECD average of 84.1%. This indicates that many graduates are actively seeking jobs but are unable to find suitable positions. This situation hinders their economic well-being and social mobility and limits their opportunities to achieve economic independence. Now we're going to move to middle adulthood. This is the developmental period from approximately 40 years of age to about 60. It is a time of expanding personal and social involvement in responsibility, of assisting the next generation in becoming competent. They are mature individuals, and it is a time of achieving and maintaining satisfaction in a career. Middle adulthood, according to Erikson, is characterized by the psychosocial crisis of generativity versus stagnation. In Mexico, Social Security benefits are not universally available, resulting in less than half of the labor force having access to pension or retirement plans. This lack of coverage forces many elderly Mexicans to continue working into their senior years. Furthermore, the high poverty rate, particularly among the older population, exacerbates the challenges related to dependency burdens in the country. Now we're going to move to the last stage of development, which is late adulthood. This is a period that begins in the 60s or 70s and lasts until death. It is a time of life review, retirement from the workforce, and adjustment to new social roles. It is also involves decreasing strength and health. According to Erikson, the late adulthood stage is characterized by the conflict of integrity versus despair. During this stage, individuals reflect on their lives, evaluating their accomplishments and choices. A key feature of demographic trends in Mexico is the rapid rate at which the older population is growing. According to data from the United Nations in 2020, the population aged 60 years or older reached 14.5 million, representing 11% of the total population. Furthermore, it is expected that in 2050, 1 out of 4 people in Mexico will be 60 and older, which will be about 40 million people. In 2018, 3/5 of people ages 60 to 69 who were interviewed reporting having been diagnosed with at least one chronic disease. In Mexico, the main chronic conditions that people face at this age in Mexico are hypertension. 42% of people face this condition. Diabetes, 26% of people, and arthritis, 12%. So, in conclusion, after analyzing each stage of development in Mexico, I recognize that social disparities between rural and urban areas, such as poverty, low quality education, lack of infrastructure and resources in schools, um, alongside issues like violence, underemployment, and limited access to healthcare services, have a negative impact on subsequent stages of development, hindering potential opportunities. Um, it was clear that the context plays a significant role in the success of each developmental stage. Finally, I believe that to improve the lifespan and developmental outcomes for the Mexican population, a multifaceted approach is essential, addressing both health and broader socioeconomic determinants. These are the references, and that's it. Thank you very much.